It was only 8:45 a.m., but this Monday was about to be the worst Monday of my life. Earlier that morning, I had kissed Marissa, my wife of 15 years, on the cheek and wished her a good day. She's a real estate agent, a damn good one judging by her commissions and bonuses, and had been for most of our marriage. "And you have a good day," she said in the fake realtor voice she liked to use. She knew I hated it when she used that voice and the fake persona that went with it. Making matters worse was her little smirk that she looked at me with. It was like she had some secret she was hiding from me. I made my way to the office, thinking about the work piled up on my desk. I had several reports to finish before the end of the month, which was coming up in just a couple weeks. As usual, I arrived at the office at 7:45, put down my briefcase, and headed to the men's room for coffee. And then it hit me. Standing at the urinal, I felt as if I were running a blade through my penis. I couldn't help myself. I screamed in agony. My immediate supervisor, Alan Randall, was using the urinal 2 stalls away from me. He heard my scream, finished his business, and buttoned his pants before coming over to check on me. "Greg, what's wrong?" he asked worriedly. "By the way, it's me, Greg Watson." "I feel like I'm on fire," I said. We looked into the urinal and saw the greenish discharge from my penis. I had never been so disgusted in my life. "Okay, Greg," Alan said. "Look, go get checked out. Let me know what the doctor says." "I need to finish all these reports," I moaned. "Don't worry about them," he said. "I'll take care of them. In the meantime, you take care of yourself. If you need to take a few days off, let me know. You've got plenty of sick leave in reserve." "Thanks, boss," I said. "I'm sorry about that." "Hey, life happens," he said with a wry smile, trying to cheer me up. I washed my face and went back to my office where I picked up my briefcase. On the way out, I told the receptionist that I would be gone for the next day, maybe more. I thought about going to my regular doctor, but his office was on the other side of town, and I doubted I would be able to get in to see him today, so I decided to go to the Urgent Care Center, located a few blocks from the office. They took samples from me and asked me to sit in the waiting room while they analyzed them. It seemed like an eternity, but it was only half an hour. Finally, a nurse came out and called my name. "Greg Watson!" the young woman called out. I looked up and saw her beckoning me toward her. She was looking at me like I was an insect. I couldn't help but wonder why and got up to follow her. She pointed to the observation room. "Have a seat, Mr. Watson," she said in a very unfriendly tone. I sat down and watched her sit down, looking at the piece of paper in front of me. She began to take my vitals, blood pressure, temperature, and so on. After she wrote everything down, she looked at me. "The doctor will be here soon," she said before leaving the room. A few minutes later, I heard a knock on the door, and an older gentleman in a white coat looked in. When he saw me, he walked into the room with a folder and sat down. "Mr. Watson, I'm Dr. Smith," he said. "Your preliminary test results have come back, and it appears you have a rather nasty case of gonorrhea." "Gonorrhea?" I asked, shocked. "How is that possible?" "It's a sexually transmitted disease, Mr. Watson," he said, looking at me like I was an idiot. "I will prescribe you an antibiotic and recommend that you abstain from sexual activity for 7 days after treatment is complete. If symptoms persist after treatment, I recommend that you see your primary care physician." He went on to explain that there were other tests going on right now, and I might not get the results for a couple weeks or more, and then demanded a list of everyone I'd been with lately. "I've only been sexually intimate with one person in my entire life," I said. "My wife." He looked at me sadly for a few moments before turning his attention to my chart. "But if I contracted it from her, wouldn't she have symptoms too?" "Not necessarily, Mr. Watson," he said. "Even if she has symptoms, she could mistake them for a bladder or vaginal infection. She should be examined as soon as possible. The longer she waits, the greater the risk of developing serious complications." "Excuse me, Mr. Watson." He handed me a packet of pills and made me sign some forms. "Take care of yourself, Mr. Watson, and don't forget to consult your doctor," he said before leaving. Great, I thought to myself as I went through the checkout process. I got in my car and called my boss to give him the news. "I'm sorry to hear that, Greg," Alan said. "Don't worry, discretion is my middle name. You'll take a leave of absence and come back when you're cleared. I've already forwarded your reports, so don't worry about anything. Get well. Thank you, I said, ending the conversation. I dreaded making the next call, but I had never kept anything from my parents, and I wasn't about to start now. I pressed my parents' speed dial button and heard my father pick up the phone. Hey, son, how's it going? He asked. Are you at work? No, Dad, I have a little problem, and I need to have a little talk with you and Mom, if that's okay. Of course, he said. Are the kids okay? As far as I know, I said. Look, I really don't want to talk about this over the phone. Well, come over. We can talk over a cup of coffee, he said. We finished talking, and I put my phone away before heading outside. I suppose I should explain something about my family. My sister Denise and I grew up in a very religious family. Our home was a very happy home filled with laughter and love. We had a very happy childhood, and our parents loved each other very much. But we were brought up with some pretty strict rules. One of them was about sex outside of marriage, a big no-no in my parents' opinion. Because of this, I never went all the way with any woman until the day I married Marissa. Sure, I dated and fooled around a little, but that was it. I remembered the day I told Marissa I wanted to wait until we were married to have sex. She smiled broadly and kissed me deeply. That's so sweet, she said. I promise I'll rock your world on our wedding night. And she did. I had never felt anything so warm in my life. She didn't seem bothered by my lack of experience, and I gladly let her teach me how to love her the way she liked. I even started to enjoy having sex with her, and she seemed to really enjoy it too. I knew she wasn't a virgin when we got married, but I didn't mind if she stayed faithful to me when we were married. She started working at a large real estate office in town and was working on getting her license. About a year after we were married, she gave birth to the first of our 2 daughters, Lisa. A year after Lisa was born, Ginger came into our lives. Marissa was having a very hard time giving birth to Ginger, so she had her tubes tied, telling me that 2 was enough for any couple. I respected her decision, and we moved on with our lives. I was hoping for a son, but was more than happy with our 2 daughters. Naturally, they both became daddy's girls, and had me wrapped around their finger in no time. Marissa returned to work after her maternity leave ended and dove headfirst into her work. Many times I found myself in the role of Mr. Mom while she was showing houses in the evenings or doing paperwork in the office. I didn't mind, really. I loved my girls and enjoyed taking care of them when Marissa wasn't around. As the girls got older, I started spending even more time with them, taking them to the extracurricular activities they did when Marissa was unavailable. Lisa loved music and took piano and guitar lessons, while Ginger was more athletic and played softball or soccer. As time went on, however, I noticed that Marissa was disappearing more and more often. And it wasn't just evenings. She was often sent to seminars out of town, where she was absent on weekends. And the company's annual retreats kept her away for a whole week. She always called me every night to check in and say hello to the girls, but it wasn't enough. On top of that, she had this annoying fake personality that drove me crazy. I talked to her about it more than once, but it was clear that she wasn't going to give it up. I also noticed that her attitude towards work had changed a bit, and wondered if she was spending too much time at work. Even the girls started to notice the change in their mother. But I never thought she would cheat on me. She knows how I feel about infidelity. Finally, I was at my parents' house and pulled into the driveway. Dad met me at the door with a big hug and a clap on the shoulder. The coffee just ran out. Come on in and we'll sit and talk, he said. I walked into the dining room and gave my mom a hug before we sat down at the table. Mom poured us coffee and I added cream and butter pecan to it. Dad did the same and we took a sip each. Why don't we start with prayer? Asked Dad. Of course. I was used to it by now. They all did it that way. There was prayer first, then discussion. We'd pray for a few minutes and then we'd get down to business. What's wrong, son? Asked Dad. I just came from the urgent care clinic. I have gonorrhea, I said. Oh my God, Dad said quietly. It was one of the things I admired about him. He could take just about anything, as long as it was the truth. Were you fooling around? He asked after a few awkward minutes. No, Dad, never, I told him. Marissa is the only woman I've ever been with. He nodded his head. I believe you, son, he said. I just wanted to hear it from you. So what are you planning to do? Mom asked. I don't see any other option but to divorce her over this, I said. It's going to be hard on the girls, she said. Yeah, but they're old enough to understand, I said. Besides, there's no way I can let it go. Even if she says she won't do it anymore, there's no way I can believe she'll keep her word. Do you have any idea how long this has been going on? Asked Dad. No, nothing. I just found out this morning that it's happening with this, I said. Adultery is a valid reason for divorce, he said. I hate that it's happening, but I don't see any other way out. Hold on a second, he added, getting up and heading into his office. I looked at my mom, who looked devastated by what was happening. I'm so sorry this happened, Greg, she said. I always thought Marissa was a wonderful girl. Me too, Mom, I said. I think she fooled us all. By then, Dad had returned with his Rolodex. He went through the cards until he found the one he was looking for. He pulled it out in triumph. There she is, he said. You know Gina Hawkins? Yeah, she goes to our church, right? I asked. Yeah, she's a family law attorney. Let me give her a call, he said. I wasn't surprised that he had her card. Being one of the deacons at the church, Dad had a bunch of cards that parishioners gave him. As I watched, he called Gina's office, and I could hear him talking to the receptionist, who I realized was her secretary. Finally, he was connected to her office, and I was able to hear his side of the conversation. Gina, hi, it's Dan Watson. Yes, from the church. We're fine here, thank you. And you? Good. Listen, I was wondering if you could take care of my son sometime soon. He's got a little problem, and I think you might be able to help him out. Really? This afternoon? 12:30? That's great. I'll make sure he gets there. Thank you, Gina. I owe you a lot. Of course, take care of yourself and give your little one a big hug for us, okay? Bye. He hung up the phone and looked at me. That was Gina. She said she had a canceled appointment, and she can see you today at 12:30, he told me. She said you need to bring your financials and tax returns for the last 2 years. Okay, I said. I guess I'd better head inside to pack my things. Sounds like a plan, son, Dad said. You know you're going to have to tell Marissa about the STD. She'll have to get tested, too, before she spreads it even further than she already has. Maybe the girl should stay with us for a while, Mom said. The house will probably get a little uncomfortable with all this going on. You're right, Dad said. Maybe they should stay a few days until things settle down. Look, son, why don't you bring the girls after they get home from school? We'll make sure they get to school on time. I will. Thanks, Dad, I said. We talked for a few more minutes and then I got up to leave. Dad hugged me at the door. It'll work out, son, he said. Just don't do anything stupid. I know you probably want revenge on Marissa, and I don't blame you for that. But remember Romans 12:19. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. You got it? I don't want to have to bail you out of jail. You've got 2 girls to think about. I grinned. No problem, Dad. I got it, I told him. I got back in the car and headed home. Dad was right about one thing. I wanted revenge on Marissa and her lover, or lovers. I had loved her exclusively for over 15 years and was more than upset that this was how she had repaid me. I got home and started digging through my files to find my old tax returns. I also had to dig through Marissa's things to find her returns as well. About 8 years ago, she had said she wanted to file separate returns, claiming it would keep us from paying more taxes than we needed to. I agreed with her idea and thought nothing more of it. When I got her tax forms, I found out the real reason she wanted to file separately. It turned out that she had gotten a lot more in bonuses and commissions than I had realized. I knew how much she had put into a joint bank account and wondered where all the extra money had gone. Digging deeper, I found a folder of bank statements. I noticed that they were from a bank we didn't use. Looking at the last statement, I saw that she had managed to put away almost $1 million over the past 8 years. What was she planning? I asked myself. Was this her exit strategy? Was she planning to leave after the kids left for college? I took the statements along with her tax forms and folded them into my folder. I got into my car and was about to get out when my phone beeped, letting me know I had a text message. It was a text from Marissa, letting me know that she had a late show and shouldn't wait for dinner. Yeah, right, I thought. No problem, I wrote back. I'll see you when you get home. I sent the message, wondering if she'd noticed that I hadn't told her I loved her. Whatever, I thought. I got to Gina's office building, parked the car, and headed to her suite. When I walked in there, I was greeted by an attractive blonde receptionist. I'm here to see Gina Hawkins, I said. I have an appointment for 12:30. She looked at her computer for a moment, then smiled and ushered me into Gina's office. Gina stood up and we shook hands. It's good to see you, Greg, she said with a smile. Would you like some coffee? Coffee is great, I said. You're welcome. Gina looked at the receptionist. Could you bring 2 cups? And some butter and nuts? Asked Gina. Sure, the receptionist said and left. She returned a few minutes later with 2 cups and several small capsules filled with butter. Gina motioned for me to sit down and I did. I was surprised to hear from your father this morning, Gina said. So you have a problem that requires my help? Yeah, looks like Marissa's cheating on me, I said. I'm sorry to hear that, Gina replied. I thought you two were the real deal. I thought so too, but apparently not. So why don't you tell me what happened? Asked Gina. I told her about our marriage, ending with the trip to the clinic this morning and the bank statements I found today. Well, I understand how you feel, Gina said. Let me explain a little bit about what divorce is in this state. You see, divorce isn't about justice. It's all about money. More specifically, how much of it you have and how much of it your wife's lawyer can get from you. Although this is a no-fault state, you can file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, but you have to have very strong evidence. What about the STD she passed on to me? I asked. I agree, it sounds very convincing, but her lawyer could easily argue that you got it from another woman, Gina said. You and I both know that's not true, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what the judge will believe. As for the money she put aside, she could easily argue that it was intended as a retirement surprise. You don't believe that for a minute, do you? I asked. No, I don't. It looks like an exit strategy to me. She's obviously waiting for the right time to make her move. I'm guessing she's waiting for the girls to finish school so she won't be left holding the bag. Again, this will be hard to prove in court. So I'm just unlucky then. Is that what you're telling me? No, not at all, she said. I have a private detective, and I can get him on the case as early as this afternoon if you'd like. If she's playing, we'll catch her. Do you want to go that route? It could be quite expensive, but at least you'll have evidence we can use in court. Yeah, let's do it, I said. Okay, she said. Gather all the information you can. Make and model of her car, license plates, that sort of thing. Any idea where she might be? Hold on a second, I said, pulling out my phone. I installed a phone finder app when she lost her cell phone a few months ago. Let me see if it still works. I opened the app and ran a search. According to it, her phone was located at a house on the north side of town. I showed Gina the address and she wrote it down. Okay, let me contact my private investigator, she said, picking up the phone. While I waited, she talked to her private investigator and emailed him the information I had given her. She ended the conversation and looked at me. Okay, we're all set. If there's something going on, we'll know soon enough. Now let's get down to business. I understand you have 2 teenage daughters, is that correct? Yes. Lisa and Ginger. Lisa is 14 and Ginger is 13. Not yet old enough to decide which parent they want to stay with, but getting close. Do you want to seek custody? Yes, I do, I told her. Okay. Just so you know, the courts usually give primary custody to the mother. It may take a while, but we can try. Who is the primary custodian? She asked. Yeah, since Marissa usually goes out for many evenings, I told her. Just curious, are you 100% sure these are your children? I think so, yes. Does it matter at this point? My name is on the birth certificates. I'm the one who raised them, changed their diapers. I'm the one paying for their care. I understand you, she said. But it would still be nice to know for sure, one way or the other. I'll give you the name and address of a lab where you can get a test kit. They usually make them pretty quickly. Okay, I said. What about your house? Are you buying or renting? Neither, I said. The house belonged to my grandparents. After they died, it went into a family trust in my parents' name. They let us live there. Okay, so I won't have to deal with the mortgage. Good, she said. I'm sure there are things in the house that will need to be divided. Generally, joint assets like bank accounts and stuff are divided 50-50. I'll give you a list of what needs to be done when we're done. Okay. Is there anything else? I asked. Not now, she said. I'll start the paperwork, but let's see what my PI comes up with before we proceed. But fill out the checklist anyway. Do you think I should go and meet her face to face? I asked. That's probably not a bad idea. At least let her know she needs to get tested for STDs. That way you won't be liable in case she spreads the infection further. Makes sense, I said. She finished with the paperwork and handed me a checklist and a card with the lab's name on it. Anything else? I asked. That's all for now, she said. Go ahead and deal with it. We'll let you know if and when we get information from the investigator. About the fee, you can ask my secretary. And Greg? Yes? Don't do anything stupid. We'll get through this. It won't be fun, but it'll get better. I know, I said. Thanks for your help. You're welcome, she said. We'll be in touch. With those words, I left, wrote a prepayment check, and headed for the lab. After getting the kit, I went to the bank and checked out most of what Gina had written. Then I headed home. This is probably where most guys would have sat down and gotten drunk off their asses, agonizing over what happens in a situation like this and why. But I didn't. Sure, it hurt. I'd never felt such resentment and betrayal in my life. But I don't drink, and I never have. That was another rule I grew up with. My parents never drank, and neither did I. I did make coffee and sat down at the table with a cup when it was ready. But I didn't have time to ponder the situation as my two angels burst through the door. They usually came home around this time after getting a ride on the bus. But they usually didn't see me when they got home. Daddy, you're home, Lisa said. Are you okay? Yes, Daddy. Why are you home so early? Asked Ginger. It's been a pretty hectic day, I told them. Look, why don't you two go up and pack enough stuff to last you a couple days? You'll stay with your grandparents for a while. Why, Daddy? Asked Ginger. What's going on? Is something wrong with Mom? Did you two have a fight? Actually, yes, something is wrong, and no, your mom and I didn't fight. I'm afraid that might come later, I told them. You caught her cheating, didn't you? Asked Lisa. I looked at her, shocked. What did she know? What makes you think that? I asked her. She lowered her eyes in embarrassment. I heard her talking to someone on the phone a couple times, Lisa said. I couldn't make it out, but she was talking in her fake voice. You know, the one she uses to annoy you. Yes, I know, I said. What did you hear? Something like, I can't wait to see you again, love. Like I said, I couldn't hear everything, and she giggled like a little girl. But it didn't sound like a professional call at all. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I know how much you hate gossip, she said. It's okay, I said, hugging her. Plus, she's been acting pretty weird lately, Lisa said. It's like she doesn't have time or desire to talk to us. Do you feel the same way? I asked, looking at Ginger. She nodded her head. Yeah, she said. Like she doesn't want us to bother her or something. Well, you two can bother me anytime you want, I said as I hugged them both. But first I need to swab both of you cheeks. Cheek swab? Asked Ginger, opening the test kit. Yes, I said. My lawyer said I should take a DNA test. You don't think we're really your children? Asked Lisa. Yes, I told her. But she wants to make sure. So you're getting a divorce? Asked Lisa. Looks like it, I told her. Is there no way you can forget what she did? Asked Ginger. I don't think so, I told her. She gave me a little, you might say, a gift. I had to see a doctor this morning. Oh, oot, Lisa said, nearly releasing a 4-letter word. Sorry, she said awkwardly. It's okay, sweetheart. I've had more than one urge to curse today, I told her. Now let me take some samples from you. I took one swab and wiped the inside of Lisa's cheek, then did the same with Ginger. After their samples were in the kit, I took a sample from my cheek and put it in a separate vial. Okay, you two go upstairs and get enough to last you for a couple nights. We need to be here in 15 minutes. And don't forget your homework, I said. They went to their rooms and began to pack up while I assembled the experiment kit. My plan was to take the kids to their grandparents and then take the kit back to the lab. Daddy, if you get divorced, can I stay with you? Asked Lisa as I drove the car. Yeah, me too, Ginger added. I hope so, girls, I said. I'm asking for custody, but you should know that the courts usually give custody to the mother. I don't want to stay with her, Lisa said. Right now, I hate her for what she did to us. I considered telling her not to hate her mother, but decided against it. She was expressing the same thing I was. I understand how you feel, sweetheart, I said. Just remember, no matter what happens, I'll always love you, and I'll always be there for you. I love you too, Daddy, she said, tears streaming down her face. Seeing her tears made me even angrier at Marissa than before. I vowed to make her pay for this. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord, I heard my father's mental words. Finally, we got to my parents' house and I pulled into the driveway. I turned to them, hugged and kissed each of them, and promised to call them later. After the kids got out of the car, we all went to the porch where my dad was waiting for us. The girls hugged him and took their stuff into the house. I gave him a hug and Mom came over to say hello. I'd better get to the lab before it's too late, I said. Are you okay? Asked Dad. I'm fine as far as I can be under the circumstances. Okay, we'll pray for you. Give us a call and let us know how it went with Marissa, he said. I will, but I'm not sure when that will be, I said. It's okay, hon, Mom said. You can call anytime. Thanks, I told her before giving her a hug. I better go. I got back in my car and headed to the lab. I got there a half hour before closing time and handed my analysis kit to the receptionist. How soon will I get the results? I asked. We should be able to get them to you by the end of the week, she said with a smile. Great, thanks, I said. I got out and headed towards the house. On the way, I decided to call Loretta, Marissa's older sister. I put in my Bluetooth earpiece and hit speed dial on my phone. She answered after the second ring. Hey, Greg, how's my favorite brother-in-law doing? She asked. I've had better, I said. I have a question for you if you have a minute. Of course, she said. Have you talked to Marissa lately? Not since we were at your place last month, she said. Everything okay? No, it's not, I said. She listened silently as I laid out the Reader's Digest version of what was going on. Oh my God, she said. I hate to say it, Greg, but it looks like she's back to her old habits. Old habits? What do you mean? Asked I. She was pretty wild when she was young. Went through guys like most people go through socks. Cheated on just about every guy she dated. She was like that for most of high school and college. After she met you, she calmed down, and I thought she was over it all. She told me she met her soulmate and wouldn't play the field anymore, so I didn't say anything to you. I'm sorry, I probably should have told you. No, it's okay, I said. It's not your fault. I understand you plan to kick her out tonight and wanted to see if she could stay here with us. Actually, yes, I said. If that's okay with you? I heard her sigh over the phone. I think she might stay here for a while, at least until she gets a grip on herself, she said. Frank won't be too happy about it, though. I don't want it to cause you problems, I told her. It's okay, he'll deal with her, just so long as she doesn't stay here too long. Okay, thanks, I appreciate that. I don't know when she'll be home tonight, but I'll call you when she leaves. Thank you, she said. How did the girls take it? They're not happy, but they're doing better than I thought they would. You've raised a couple of good young women, Greg. You have to be strong for them, she said. I'm trying, I said. Well, I should get going. I still have to make dinner. Call me later, okay? I will, I told her before we ended the conversation. I got home and decided to heat up some leftover meatloaf for dinner. I had just finished watching the evening news when my phone rang. I saw that it was a call from Gina and answered it. Hi, Greg, she said when I answered. I looked at my watch and saw that it was just over 6:30. Hey, I said. Working late tonight? For you, yes, she said. I just got some preliminary information from a private investigator. It seems your wife was a very busy girl. She's been with 3 men since 1 o'clock this afternoon. Wow, I thought. 3 men in one day? When does she even have time to work? Really? I asked. Yes, she said. Anyway, I'm forwarding the information to your email. Photos, video, and a summary of the report. I'd recommend you don't watch the video, but you should listen to the last few minutes. Pretty enlightening stuff. So, do you now have enough evidence for a divorce? Oh yeah, she said. Call me when you're done listening to the audio recording, okay? Okay, thanks, Gina, I said when we were done talking. I started up my laptop and checked my email. I opened the video and turned it up to the point Gina had mentioned in her email. I had no desire to watch the video of her having sex, but I was curious to hear what she had to say. I see you're married, he said, pointing to her rings. For the moment, she said. I noticed you're married too, she added, glancing at his ring. Yes, my wife and I have an open marriage, he said. And you? It's not an open marriage like yours, but I allow liberties when they arise, she said. So your husband doesn't know? He asked. No, he doesn't, she said. He has no idea what kind of whore he's married to. Now I'm guessing. The lying whore, I thought to myself. What's the matter? Isn't he doing well at home? The man asked. He had better, for I have taught him everything he knows, she told him. You taught him? The man asked, shocked. Was he a virgin when you got married? Believe it or not, he was, she said. Imagine a 23-year-old virgin. He's a religious freak. Doesn't smoke, doesn't drink. Hell, he doesn't even swear. He'd probably go into a bender if I said shit next to him. He didn't even know how to have sex until we were married. Shit, the man said. Sounds like a fucking loser. So why do you stay with him? Do you love him? In a way, I guess so, at least a little bit. He's a good father to my girls. Takes good care of them. Doesn't fuss when I get home late. Other than that, he's a total bore, she said. The girls are his? He asked. She shrugged. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe. Honestly, I don't care. He thinks they're his, and that's the main thing, she said. How long have you been fiddling with him, if you don't mind me asking? I don't mind, she said. Hell, I've been having fun my whole married life. And he still didn't get it? No. He has no idea. He's never been with another woman, so he won't even know the difference. That's it, she said. At that moment, I had to hold back a gagging fit. It made me sick to think that she'd been doing this to me the whole time we'd been married. Do you plan to stay with him? Yeah, for now. At least until the girls graduate high school and go off to college, she said. That's about 4 or 5 years from now. I'll have everything ready to run away by then. Why wait? He asked. Because the courts usually give custody to the mother, and the last thing I want to do is end up with 2 teenage girls in my arms, she says. What do you plan to do after this? I plan to celebrate. Maybe have fun with a few people at once. Maybe I'll go on a cruise or retire to Costa Rica or something. I don't know, she said. Oh, I've got a couple guys. Do you think you can get away for the weekend? He asked. Sure, she said. I can tell Greg I have a mandatory weekend seminar or something. He'll believe anything I tell him. Let me know when you can get out and we'll set it up. You have my number. I will, she said with a smile. He glanced at his watch. It's getting late and it's time for me to leave. I look forward to seeing you again, sweetheart. I'm looking forward to it myself, she said. He left the room, and Marissa settled down on the bed with a huge grin on her face. "Oh, Greg," she said to the empty room. "You have no idea what's in store for you." I finished the video and wiped away the tears that were now streaming down my face. I hadn't realized she was so angry. I sighed and dialed Gina's number. "I just finished with the video," I said. "You were right. It was enlightening." "So, how do you want me to proceed?" she asked. "Burn it to the ground," I said firmly. "Consider it done," she said. "What about all those guys she was with?" I asked. "Can we go after them too?" "I'm afraid not," she said. "Alienation of affection lawsuits are no longer allowed in this state. Don't worry about it. I have a feeling things aren't going to go well for them when their wives catch gonorrhea. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord, I said quietly, repeating what Dad had told me earlier. Gina giggled at that. "Well, I have to go," she said. "I'll prepare the papers and hand her in this week. She wants to run away, we'll set it up for her. Only it won't be the way she wanted it." "Thanks, Gina, I owe you one," I said. "I'd love to." "Just take good care of your girls," she said. We finished talking and I leaned back on the back of the couch, tears streaming down my face. It pained me to think that I had given Marissa the 15 best years of my life. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. It was a call from Marissa. "Hi," I said in response. "Hi, Greg," she said. "Are you okay?" "That doesn't sound good." "It's been a bad day," I said. "What's going on?" "I'm finishing up work." "I think I made another sale," she said. "Okay," I said in a neutral tone. "I'll be leaving soon, so I'll be home in half an hour, okay?" "Yes, of course," I told her. "Okay, I'll see you when I get home." "Love you," she said in her fake voice. "Me too," I said, ending the conversation. I wondered if she noticed that I hadn't told her I loved her, and then I realized I didn't care if she noticed or not. I printed out the 4 pictures, putting them all on one sheet of paper, and put them in a folder. I intended to meet her tonight when she got home. I laid out all my things on the kitchen table, then made a cup of coffee and sat down to wait for Marissa to come home. I waited and waited. After an hour, she still hadn't shown up, but I figured she was probably lingering somewhere, so I kept waiting. 2 hours later, she still hadn't shown up, and I was getting worried. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message and sent her a text, but got no response. 3 hours later, there was still nothing. I started to wonder if she had been in an accident. Almost 3.5 hours later, I got a call on my home phone. I picked up the phone, hoping it was her. But it wasn't. "Greg Watson," I said, picking up the phone. "Mr. Watson, this is Angela Barnes from Mercy Hospital. Are you related to Marissa Watson?" "She's my wife," I said. "Really, not for long." "Mr. Watson, your wife was in an accident and has been brought here for treatment. Can you come as soon as possible?" "Yeah," I said. "Is she okay?" "What happened?" "I'm sorry, sir, I can't give you that information," Angela said. "Her doctor would like to speak with you. When you get here, just ask to be called to the courtesy desk and they'll take care of you." "Thank you," I said. She ended the conversation, and I wondered what had happened. I put the paper with the pictures in an envelope and slipped it into my jacket pocket. I thought about calling Dad or Loretta, but decided to wait until I had more information. I jumped in the car and hit the road. I reached the hospital and went inside. As I approached the courtesy desk, I introduced myself to the middle-aged lady behind the counter and gave her my wife's name as a patient. She checked Marissa on the computer and turned to the other woman next to her. "Would you please escort Mr. Watson to the ICU?" she asked. "Sure," the other woman said and looked at me. She went around the counter and indicated for me to follow her, which I did. We went upstairs to the ICU and I was met by a uniformed police officer. "Mr. Watson?" he asked. "That's me," I said. "I'm Officer Simpson. I'm the one who responded to the report of your wife's accident," he said. "What's wrong?" I asked. "She was driving through the intersection of 3rd and Main when she was hit by a truck." The other driver was drunk, ran a red light, and hit her car on the driver's side. "I'm very sorry," he said. "It's okay," I said. Her car was taken to the junkyard. "There's not much left of it," he said, handing me a business card from the tow truck company. "If there's anything I can do to help, give me a call." "Thank you, officer," I said, taking his card. When he left, a man in a white medical coat approached me. "Greg Watson?" he asked. "Yeah?" I asked. "I'm Dr. Blake. I'm the doctor in charge of your wife's treatment. Can we talk for a moment, please?" "Sure," I said. He led me into a small room, closed the door, and sat down in a chair in front of a small round table. I sat in the other chair across from him. "How is my wife doing?" I asked. "She has several broken bones and quite a lot of internal injuries. She also took a severe blow to the head. We've put her in a medically induced coma to help her recover." "But there's more? Did you know your wife has gonorrhea?" "Yes, I learned that firsthand this morning," I said. "And I take it you're being treated for that?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Good. But that's not all. Our initial tests indicate that she may be HIV positive. We've sent her blood for a full blood test, but it will take a few days, if not weeks, to get the results. Have you been tested for HIV?" "Not that I know of," I said. "They drew blood when I went to urgent care this morning, but I don't know if they checked it." "I suggest you see your primary care physician as soon as possible. Tomorrow would be a good time. The sooner you take the test, the better. If either or both of you test positive, you should discuss this with your doctor. In general, if you practice safe sex and take your medication, you should be able to have a fairly normal sex life," he said. "It depends on her," he said. "It could take anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks. Depending on how quickly she heals, she could be here for a while after that." "Can I see her now?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "She could really use your support right now." I grinned to myself. He stood up and opened the door. "She's in room 5 over there," he added, pointing to her door. "Thank you, doctor," I said, shaking his hand. I walked into her room and looked at her. She was covered in bandages, and a cast covered one leg all the way up to her hip. Her face was black and blue, and a few cuts had been stitched up. She looked like she had been through a war zone. I said a prayer for her and then removed the ring. I took out the envelope with the pictures and wrote her name on the front. Then I put my ring inside and sealed the envelope. I looked at the nurse who was taking care of her. "Could you make sure she gets this when she wakes up?" I asked. "Of course," the nurse said. "Go put it on the tray over there," she added, pointing to an empty wheeled tray. "Thank you," I said, placing it on the tray so Marissa could see it. I took one last look at the woman on the bed. As much as I hated what she had done, I didn't want to see her like this. Seeing that she was still wearing her rings, I took them off and put them in my pocket. "Goodbye, Marissa," I said quietly. "I'll see you later." The nurse looked at me cheerfully as I left the room. I called Loretta on the way home from the hospital to bring her up to speed. She was shocked when I told her what had happened and what the doctor had told me. "Greg, you know Frank won't let her stay here if she's HIV positive," she said. "I know it will be safe, but he won't want her around the kids. I can't go against him on this issue." Her parents retired a few years ago and moved to Florida, so that was out of the question. "Then I guess I'll have to find her an apartment," I said. "I think it's for the best," she said. "I'm sorry, Greg, but I'm not going to put her above my family. She made her bed, let her lie in it, I don't care. When you find something, I'll help you move her stuff, but then I'll wash my hands of it." "I understand," I said. "I don't blame you." "It's getting late and it's time for bed, but keep me posted, Greg," she said. "I will," I told her. "Thanks." It was almost midnight when I got home. I was exhausted, so I undressed and collapsed into bed, falling asleep almost as soon as my head hit the pillow. After waking up the next morning, I called the doctor's office to make a same-day appointment. I was a little surprised when they told me they had an appointment available for later that morning. I then called my parents and told them what had happened. They were shocked to hear about the accident and that she might be HIV positive, but said they would take the girls to the hospital if they wanted to see her. I also told them about the evidence that had been handed to me. Dad asked me to forward them to his email address. It's really bad, I told him. It's all right, son, he said. I'm a big boy now. After I forwarded the letter, I called Gina to tell her the news. She was shocked too, but said it would give her time to finalize the divorce papers. I then called Marissa's office to inform them of her accident. They expressed their condolences to me and promised to stop by to see her. The next 2 weeks were hectic. I managed to find a 2-bedroom ground floor apartment with an attached garage, put down a deposit and paid 2 months' rent in advance, all from Marissa's half of the bill. The girls and Loretta arrived, helped pack up all of Marissa's things, including our wedding album, and we drove them to the apartment. I also got the report from the DNA lab and was happy to know that both girls were indeed mine. I couldn't help but smile at that. I met with the insurance adjuster and he inspected Marissa's car. I couldn't help but wonder how she had managed to survive the accident. The insurance agent said the same thing. The car ended up being in an accident. Since the car and the insurance policy were in her name, she would get a check. I got her stuff out of the car and took it to her apartment. Did you stop by Marissa's? My mom asked a week after the accident. No, I haven't, I said. At least not since that first day. Why? I was just wondering, she said. She's made it clear that she doesn't care about any of us and she wants to run away. I'm giving her what she wants. Just not on her schedule, I said. 2 weeks after that fateful Monday, I went to the doctor. I was rid of the gonorrhea Marissa had given me, but the doctor was still waiting to see if she had infected me with something worse. The pain in my groin was almost gone, but the emotional pain I felt in my heart would take a long time to heal. I called Alan and told him I would be back to work the next day, which made him very happy. That same day, I received a call from the hospital informing me that Marissa had finally woken up from her induced coma. The nurse who called said that they were taking tests and examining her, and suggested that I come to see her late that night. That suited me just fine. I called Gina and told her the news. She had filed divorce papers with the court, and we were both waiting for Marissa to wake up so she could be served. She arranged for the bailiff to meet me at the hospital in the afternoon. My next call was to Loretta, who agreed to meet me in her room. I told the girls that their mother was awake, but they only shrugged, saying, "Never mind." I'm going to meet her this afternoon. Would you like to come with me? I asked them. No thanks, Dad, Lisa said. I'm too mad at her right now. Me too, Ginger said. Besides, I have a lot of homework to do. Okay. Then I'll take you to your grandparents when I leave, I said. I knew it would be harder on them than it was on me, and I didn't want to force them to see their mother if they didn't want to. Around 4:30, I drove them to Mom and Dad's house and explained that Marissa was awake, and I would meet Loretta and the bailiff there. Let us know how it went, son, the father said. I will, I said. I'll come back for the girls when I'm done. Good. Then you can have some of Mom's lasagna when you get here, he said with a smile. Mom's lasagna was legendary, and it was guaranteed to lift my spirits. Sounds good, I said before leaving. When I arrived at the hospital, I made my way to the room where Marissa was being cared for. I saw Loretta outside the nurse's station talking to the doctor, and I noticed a man in a brown jacket not far from her holding a manila envelope. This was undoubtedly the bailiff. I walked over to the nurse's station and spoke to the doctor. How is she? I asked. She's conscious and her vital signs are normal, he said. The antibiotics we gave her did their job, and we're just monitoring the situation. She seems to be recovering well. However, I want to keep her here for another week, but I think she can go home after that. Okay, I said. Is she allowed to have visitors? Yes, but not for too long, he said. I'm not here for long, I told him. He nodded his head understandingly. Loretta and I headed to her room, and the process server joined us. Marissa looked up as we entered. I saw that she had opened the envelope I had left on my first day here. Hi, Greg. Loretta, she said quietly. Marissa, I said in response. Loretta didn't say anything. Marissa looked at me sadly before she spoke. I take it you all found out, she said, pointing to the envelope. Yes, I told her. So were you following me or something? How did you know? She asked. You passed your illness on to me, I said. That's how I found out. And yes, I followed you after that. I have pictures, video, and audio. More than enough to prove infidelity. I looked at the bailiff and nodded my head. Before he spoke, he looked at Marissa. Are you Marissa Watson? He asked. Yes, she said quietly. He handed her the envelope and took a picture. You've been served, he said before walking out. You couldn't even wait until I was out of the hospital to serve me? Asked Marissa. No, I said. You were the one who wanted to run away. I just moved your schedule forward a few years. Do the girls know? She asked in response. Yes, they are, I told her. And they don't like you too much right now. That's why they're not here. And you don't have to worry about being saddled with them. I'm asking for full custody. I will grant you liberal visitation rights if they want to see you. But right now they want nothing to do with you. I don't blame them. Not one bit. She looked at me, shocked that I had used her own language against her. And I understand you hate me too, she said. Hate is a pretty strong word, I said. Let's just say I don't think very highly of you anymore. She nodded her head. Do you think you can forgive me? She asked. Maybe someday when I can look at my girls and no longer see the pain and suffering on their faces. Pain and suffering caused by you, by the way. And by the way, the girls are mine. I had their DNA tested. That's not going to happen, Doc, I said. I see, he said. How long will she be in a coma? I asked. Where will I go when I'm released? She asked. I rented an apartment for you. Loretta has agreed to take you there when you get out. Marissa looked at her older sister when I said that. All your stuff has already been moved, and the utilities are in your name. I pulled out an envelope and held it out to her. This is your half of our joint bills minus the deposit and 2 months' rent on the apartment. Your car was totaled, so you'll get a check for that as well. She took the envelope and nodded her head. By the way, I also know about your little escape fund. My attorney has frozen that account. If you sign the papers, she'll unlock the funds. Minus my half, of course, I said. She looked at me, shocked that I had discovered her nest egg. I'll fight you for it, she said. I don't think that would be very wise, I told her. Unless, of course, you want the evidence I have to go public. They are quite graphic. She deflated when I said that. Have your lawyer go through the papers. I'm sure you'll find them as fair as you can under the circumstances. Then sign them, and we can get this sham marriage over with. Marissa looked at Loretta, hoping her sister would intercede on her behalf, but she didn't. You stupid bitch, Loretta hissed. I warned you years ago that you'd burn if you didn't pull yourself together. You didn't just lie to your husband and children. You lied to me when you said you'd put all that shit behind you. I promised Greg I'd take you back to your apartment when you got out, but that's it. After that, I'm done with you. What? Asked Marissa, tears streaming down her face. I knew how close they were, and I knew my older sister was having a hard time. You heard me, you stupid lying cunt, Loretta said. After I take you to your apartment, I never want to see you again until you clean yourself up. Do you hear me? Sobbing, Marissa nodded her head. I'm so sorry, she cried. That and a $5 bill can buy a cup of coffee, Loretta said. I'm serious. I don't want you anywhere near my family until you pull your head out of your ass. And start by apologizing to your husband and your girls. With tears in her eyes, Marissa looked at me. I'm so sorry, Greg, she said. I know you don't believe me, but I love you. You're right. I don't believe you, I said. Sign the papers, Marissa. End this now. She nodded her head, saying nothing. Goodbye, Marissa. I started to leave, but she spoke before I got to the door. Can I call the girls, Greg? Please? She asked. You can call any time you want, I told her. But I can't guarantee they'll talk to you. I understand, she said quietly. Thank you for that, at least. You're welcome, I said, and turned away from her. As I walked across the room, I could see the unpleasant looks from the nurses. No doubt they disapproved of me handing her the divorce papers at the hospital. Too bad, I thought. I drove to my parents' house and drowned my sorrow in a huge portion of my mom's lasagna. Epilogue. The divorce went smoothly. 3 months later, I was a free man, and not just in one sense. Not only was I free of Marissa, but I learned that I had dodged a bullet and was HIV negative. Oddly enough, Marissa's tests came back negative as well. Gina handed me a check for a little over $450,000, half the money Marissa had kept in her secret account. I didn't need it all, so I put it into 2 accounts for the girls' college education. Life went on for the 3 of us. Lisa and Ginger were my main reason for living these days. Sure, there were times when things were a bit of a stretch. It's not easy being a single dad with 2 teenage girls. But I managed with the help and guidance of my mom. I haven't followed Marissa, but the girls told me she was adjusting to her new life as a single divorced woman. Yes, they finally talked to their mother, and she apologized to them. It was almost a year before the girls warmed up enough to spend even an afternoon with their mother. She bought a new car and went back to selling houses, but with a different company. Somehow her antics became known, and the management was not too happy about what they found out. She was offered either resignation or dismissal. She chose the former and took a job at another company where, the girls told me, she was doing well. And they said she had finally given up her false identity. As for me, I have found that there are several single ladies in the church claiming my attention. I found myself being pelted with various dishes to take home: pies, casseroles, even lasagna from time to time. And it seemed that my girls were eagerly waiting for me to get attached to them again. "Come on, Dad, you need to get out there and start dating again," Lisa told me. "It's not good for you to be alone." "I wouldn't even know where to start," I said. "And I'm not alone. You two keep me very busy. But we're not going to stay here forever." "It's simple, Daddy," Ginger said. "You walk up to a woman and ask her out to dinner. You can do that, right?" I looked at my youngest daughter and wondered when she'd become an expert on dating. "I guess I could give it a try," I said. That Wednesday night, I ran into Rhonda Carson in line at the coffee shop at our church. She had lost her husband in Iraq a few years earlier and was raising her 17-year-old daughter alone. She was one of the women who gave me a casserole to take home for dinner. "Hi, Rhonda, how are you doing?" I asked. "Hanging in there, Greg," she said. "How about you?" "I'm fine, and I really enjoyed the casserole you gave me last week," I said. "Thank you." "Do you handle raising your girls alone?" she asked. "It's a little difficult sometimes, but yeah, I manage." She laughed. "Well, if you're managing, then you're pretty good at it, I guess," she said. "How are you doing?" "You have a teenage daughter too," I said. "The hardest part is trying to handle everything alone," she says. "I can understand that," I said. We grabbed coffee and sat at a table, talking about the difficulties of single parenthood when I decided to step up. "Look, Rhonda, I'm totally new to this whole dating thing, but would you like to have dinner with me sometime?" "Maybe this Friday?" I asked. She thought for a moment, smiled, and nodded her head. "Yes, Greg, I'd like that," she said. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I said. "I'd like to try the new Texas Roadhouse restaurant. Do you like it?" "I'd have a steak," she said. "Sure, that sounds tempting. Maybe we can go to a movie or something later." "Great," I said. "I can pick you up at 6:30 if that's okay with you." "That sounds wonderful," she said. "In fact, you can bring the girls, and they can stay with Linda if that's okay with you." They had known each other for a long time and were already friends, so I thought it would be a good idea. "Sounds good to me," I said. The girls were excited about my date with Rhonda, and they liked the idea of spending the evening with Linda, so it was all set. That Friday, I invited the girls over and we went out to dinner. Rhonda looked really cute in her denim skirt, and we had a great time. We didn't have sex that night, but she gave me a hot kiss when I stopped in front of her house. I noticed 3 sets of eyes watching us from the window of her house, and I thought I saw them giving each other high fives. "That was the best night I've had in months," Rhonda said as I hugged her. "Same thing," I said. "What if we do it again sometime soon?" she said. Maybe we'll send the girls to a movie and we'll stay home and play, she added, running her hand down my leg. I felt a familiar thrill. I think you're onto something, I said, running my hand down her smooth leg. The girls were excited about our date, and I had to admit that I was feeling pretty good about it too and enjoying the time with Rhonda. I'm not sure anything long-term will come of this, but I'm willing to take the risk. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.
Alright, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.